listener supported. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. Our two-week special, Breaking with Convention, War, Peace, and the Presidency. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. Actually, we're broadcasting from PhillyCam, which is Philadelphia's public access TV station. And for those who haven't gotten a chance to see our break, go to it at democracynow.org and see what the folks here are doing, people making their own media. We're talking about Secretary of State Hillary Clinton making history by becoming the first woman to accept a major party presidential nomination. Our guests are Rebecca Traister, writer-at-large for New York Magazine. She's written about Hillary Clinton for a decade. Her most recent article, headlined, "Hillary is poised to make the impossible possible for herself and for women in America." She's the author of All the Single Ladies, Unmarried Women and the Rise of an Independent Nation. And we're joined by Kshama Sawant, who is a Socialist City Council member in Seattle, Washington. She helped spearhead the $15 an hour minimum wage for all workers in Seattle. Well, we left it at Kshama talking about how you won that victory and how the Democratic Party was allied against you. And you talked about if the Democratic Party was serious about taking on Donald Trump, which it sounds both of you women seriously are interested in, that they would not have fought so hard to undermine Bernie Sanders. Rebecca Traister, can you respond to that?
Well, you know,
that he was the best candidate, you said, and that the polls indicated he was the one who could beat Donald Trump. Now, the polls do show, and right now, I'm sure new polls will be coming out now after a convention, you get that convention bump, that he is ahead in most polls that are being taken right now.
Yeah, no, I'm terrified. I don't think that Bernie Sanders, I mean, and this is my guess, we're all guessing counterfactually at this point. Why
are you so concerned about Donald Trump?
Because look at the amount of support he has behind him. I mean, he is channeling something, and whether it's what Kshama says, I mean, I think it's a combination of many factors, that it's this sense of dissatisfaction with the establishment, that it is an understanding and a feeling on the right that what we have is not working, and they're searching anywhere for alternatives, and they've, on the right, got their hands on this particularly ghoulish one. I also think that I also think that simultaneously it's tied to all kinds of racial and gendered xenophobic resentments, and that's powering a lot of it. I think that we are still in the midst of major ruptures and shifts in this country about the kinds of people who can have power, the kinds of people who can be sitting here having these kinds of conversations and having an impact on elections, and that there are all kinds of resentments at work, and that's powering it, and that's powerful. It could be.
So what about the point that if the Democratic Party wanted to actually beat him?
Well, I was not persuaded that Bernie Sanders, I know he polled very well, but he also hadn't had any negative ads run against him. He didn't have a single negative ad run against him.
And hardly any media also covering him, although toward the end.
Well, the media tore him apart, especially in the New York State primaries. First there was a media blackout, and then there was a vicious series of attacks on him. So I don't really agree factually about the fact that he wasn't attacked in the media. And in reality, the reason he didn't win the nomination is because the Democratic Party did not want him to win the nomination. And it's not just about the polls. It's not just about the polls that indicated that he would have made a better candidate against Trump. It's about the actual politics. I mean, the political substance of Clinton and Trump. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that there is a difference between Clinton and Trump. And as I said, I find Trump's agenda stomach-turning. But the reason Trump gets an echo is because people look at somebody like Clinton and they see correctly her as an epitome of the establishment. Unfortunately for us, Trump is now, as you said, ghoulishly, but he is disingenuously posing as an outsider to the establishment, even though we all know he's very much an insider. He's a multi-billionaire. He represents the same interests of Wall Street that Hillary Clinton represents. The contrast between them is so little. That's why you're seeing this difficulty. So in reality, if Hillary Clinton is not doing well against Trump, it's because there's not enough of a contrast. The reason Trump is making gains is because you don't have a real left to counter him.
I really disagree that the contrast between them is so little. I think the contrast between them is vast. I mean, I understand that you're saying there's a difference, but I think it's just not true that that difference is slim.
Well, no, I mean, I completely agree that they're different. But if you look at the actual, realities on the ground, the people who are drawn towards Trump, I don't agree. I mean, if the narrative that people are presenting is that millions of Americans have suddenly become racist and misogynist and hateful, I don't agree with that. I mean, yes, there are complexities, obviously, but the reason he's the vast majority of his echo is because there are millions of people around this nation who are looking for an alternative to corporate America. And look at the state of Michigan, for example. One of the reasons Bernie and Donald Trump did well is because there was huge anger in the Midwest against NAFTA, and there is fear about the TPP. So let's talk about the real political substance. We agree that there is a difference, but I think what's missing here is the fact that this is a false choice. Yes, we agree there's a difference between Clinton and Trump, but offering those two as choices and say pick one is a false choice for America. You have America, which is the wealthiest country in the history of humanity, and poverty is skyrocketing. The vast majority of people cannot even weather a $1,000 unexpected financial bill. So, we're talking about people who are struggling to maintain a foothold into survival. Who is going to represent them? And we have to start somewhere, and we can't make this false argument that it's about this presidential election, because if it was about the presidential election, then why don't we have the strongest candidate against Trump? We don't have it because the establishment does not believe in promoting that agenda. I
want to go back to your argument that the DNC rigged this, basically. I mean, you didn't use the word rigged, so I don't want to put a word in your mouth. But
well, they rigged it. You can say that.
Okay, all right. It's interesting looking at all the emails that were hacked and that have been released. And one of the things that struck me is that, of course, there was the horrendous sort of discussion of using Bernie's faith against him. It was very obvious that people within the DNC didn't like Bernie Sanders. It doesn't come as a huge surprise to me. I think the DNC was not operating well throughout this primary season. But what I didn't find actually was any evidence that there was any systemic rigging. I mean, Hillary Clinton won millions of more votes than Bernie Sanders over the course of these primaries. And there are all kinds of arguments about why and whether it should have gone that way. But to me, I have found no persuasive evidence. I found evidence that people in the DNC did not like Bernie, that people in the party did not like Bernie. He hadn't, he recently joined the party. That's very true, and I understand why it's troublesome. But I haven't seen any evidence that the process itself was rigged, or that there was any actual. They didn't get it. They didn't. There was nothing in all those emails about what they were going to do to stop this guy who, yes, they were saying they didn't like. But I think the idea that the DNC, a rather ineffectual organization, had an impact on what was a deeply flawed process that I wish we did differently in this country, but she won by a lot.
I think that if you are having your ear to the ground and listening to the millions of people, and not just the people outside. I mean, I'm not a member of the Democratic Party. You don't have to take it from me. Take it from the 700 to 1,000 delegates of the Democratic Party that walked out on Wednesday. These are people, ordinary activists of the Democratic Party, who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into building the party because they're fighting for social change. And for decades, they've wanted to believe that this party represents them. And they've walked out because they don't see this party as representing them.
We're going to have to leave it there. But of course, this conversation will continue. And I hope you'll both come back with us to continue talking about this as we carry on covering this election through November, and of course the issues well beyond. That does it for the show. Rebecca Traister and Kshama Sawant, thank you so much for joining us.